tensions remain high at 26 Federal Plaza in Lower Manhattan, where federal immigration authorities continue to arrest migrants who are appearing for routine hearings. My next guest, Congressman Goldman, is one of many elected officials now calling on the NYPD to arrest and charge ICE agents who abuse their authority. In a letter to Police Commissioner Jessica Tisch, he writes, quote, "No person, regardless of their badge, should be permitted to assault or unlawfully detain any New Yorker without facing consequences." That request comes just a few weeks after one violent incident was caught on camera of an ICE agent pushing a woman to the ground and slamming her head. Congressman Goldman joins me now. His district includes neighborhoods in Manhattan and Brooklyn. He's also a former federal prosecutor. Welcome back to the program.
Thanks for having me.
Us. So you're asking the NYPD to be ready to intervene and potentially arrest ICE agents. I mean, based on what you've seen so far, what do you think they should be arrested for?
Well, it's really what we've seen around the country more than what is happening at 26 Federal Plaza. What is happening at 26 Federal Plaza is egregious and incredibly problematic, and it is the subject of a lawsuit that I and 11 of my colleagues have filed in court. But the NYPD doesn't have jurisdiction at 26 Federal Plaza. It's a federal building. But what we're seeing in Chicago and Portland and Los Angeles with someone getting shot with a pellet gun in the face and these really egregiously violent arrests sometimes, and there's been now documentation, incredible evidence, of United States citizens. That is illegal. The ICE cannot arrest U.S. citizens. And what they're doing then, going and arresting them and then assaulting them, which is really what they're doing, violates New York law. And so I wrote the letter because the NYPD needs to be prepared and trained to try to first de-escalate a situation and make sure that New Yorkers are protected under New York law.
And this could escalate even further if federal troops were sent into New York, as they have been into other cities, which is something that President Trump has threatened to do. Is that something that the NYPD should be prepared for?
Well, look, that really crosses a Rubicon, of course, that we've seen lawsuits around the country. New York City does not need any federal troops right now. We have the greatest law enforcement department in the world. There's no question that crime is an issue. It is going down. We are addressing it. We are perfectly capable of addressing it. The only thing that an invasion of ICE agents and National Guard and military members does is it ratchets up the tension and increases violence. It is simply not necessary, and it should not happen. But we're also seeing, short of military coming in, we're seeing very aggressive masked ICE agents without identification targeting individuals with really no reasonable suspicion to believe that they are certainly not convicted criminals. 70% of those who've been detained at 26 Federal Plaza have no criminal record. I mean, these are people many of whom are trying to lawfully immigrate here, and there's a dragnet of this secret police that is attacking them, arresting them, deporting them without due process. It is un-American.
Well, have you heard anything from Police Commissioner Tisch in response to the letter?
Not yet, no.
Okay. And you have actually been trying to go in and inspect the facility at 26 Federal Plaza on the 10th floor where immigrants are taken and held. You have not been allowed entry. You argue it is your statutory right as a congressman to inspect a detainee facility. Where do things stand with that?
Well, 11 of my colleagues and I have filed a lawsuit because all of us have been prevented from conducting our oversight responsibility as members of Congress of the Department of Homeland Security. We know because the Department of Justice admitted in court and then a judge entered a preliminary injunction that the 10th floor is excessively and unconstitutionally housing and detaining immigrants. But they are preventing, the Department of Homeland Security is preventing us from conducting oversight, which we are authorized to do not just constitutionally as a co-equal branch, but under statute. And we are waiting right now for a decision from the judge on a preliminary injunction motion that has been fully briefed and argued, and we're hoping to get that any day.
And if you were to win on that motion, you would then be allowed entry into the facility at 26 Federal Plaza.
Yes.
All right. So let me ask you on a completely different topic. I mean, there's a lot going on in Washington that we could talk about. There's also a lot not going on because of the federal shutdown. We're now 3 weeks and counting. It seems like both sides are dug in. I don't see any sign of compromise or even negotiation at this point. I mean, should people be prepared for a long shutdown? Is there any end in sight to this?
Well, it's pretty amazing that there is no sign of a negotiation. In fact, there has been no sign of negotiation. There's been no action towards negotiation from Republicans from the start. But in this case, unlike in the big ugly bill, Republicans need Democratic votes. So they are acting as if it's their God-given right to just ram through legislation without negotiating, without reaching a bipartisan agreement. We are prepared, and we would love to open the government. Nobody on the Democratic side wants to see this shutdown. But the Republicans have absolutely targeted and destroyed health care for the most vulnerable Americans, including millions of New Yorkers. And we are standing up because we can, right? We have votes that they need, and we are standing up for the American people to have health care as a right and to have affordable health care that the Republicans are trying to take away. And this is a hill that we are willing to die on because it is that important for the American people.
As this drags on, though, I mean, there are some dangers to a prolonged shutdown, right? I mean, what are some of your concerns in terms of the impact that the shutdown could have on Americans and on your constituents?
Look, there's no question that there's a significant impact, certainly first and foremost to federal employees who are not getting paid. And as this goes on, especially these paychecks are needed to make ends meet. It also will start to impact a lot of government programs that may not have sufficient funding. But what's really egregious about it is that Donald Trump, and I think this is part of the reason why the Republicans have no interest in negotiating, Donald Trump is trying to use the shutdown as an excuse to target and threaten and extort Democratic cities and states, including and especially New York. He has frozen more federal funding in my district than any other district in the country. And he's doing this because he is a wannabe mob boss who's trying to bully his way into an agreement. But it's not going to work. We're not going to cave to the mob boss. And then on the other hand, you have Mike Johnson, who refuses to call us back into Washington where we could negotiate because he is so desperately trying to keep the Epstein files hidden at the direction of Donald Trump.
Let me ask you about electoral politics. You have some critics, particularly on sort of the left flank of the Democratic Party, who have talked about mounting a robust primary challenge to you next year. Reportedly, City Councilwoman Alexa Aviles is interested in a run in the primary. I guess, first of all, do you know the City Councilwoman? Do you have a
yeah, we overlap in Brooklyn and work together on a number of things.
So what do you think about the idea of a primary challenge from the left and people in your district who think there should be somebody who's further on that end of the political spectrum representing them?
Look, I believe firmly and stand up against Donald Trump because I believe in democracy, and so anyone is welcome to jump in the race. I'm happy to lay out my record as my 3 years in Congress, where I have fought for absolutely everything that I think the district really believes in. And I've been at the forefront not only of standing up to Donald Trump, but also of leading this fight against ICE as just one example, a more recent example. But certainly fighting corruption that this government, this administration is using. And using my experience as a prosecutor and an impeachment lawyer to be a really loud and aggressive voice standing up to the authoritarianism that we're seeing in Washington. And I'll continue to do that. And I'll continue to serve my constituents, all of them, whether they agree with every single policy area of mine or not. I'm very proud to represent the district. I love the district, and I will continue to fight for the district.
And just quickly before we go, you are among the top Democrats who have not endorsed the Democratic nominee for mayor, Zohran Mamdani. Why not endorse the Democratic nominee?
Well, look, regardless of what happens with whoever wins, I am eager to work together to address many of the issues that New York City is facing. And I agree very much with Zohran Mamdani's view that affordability is the #1 issue. I support and have always supported universal child care and look forward, if he is mayor, to working with him on that. He and I actually worked on the pilot program for free bus routes together in the state assembly, and I will do everything I can to make life better for New Yorkers and more affordable, regardless of who the mayor is. There's one issue that really jumps out, though, and that is the rise of anti-Semitism in New York City and around the country that has now really bled over into violence and murder. And there are many Jews in New York, including myself, who are fearful because of this rise of anti-Semitism that has now turned violent. And I had a very good conversation with Mr. Mamdani earlier this summer, and I've continued to engage in hoping that he will recognize that regardless of his views on Israel or Gaza, New York Jews are not responsible for any of that, and anti-Semitism here in New York is hate. Hate should not be permitted, and as the leader of the city, it is incumbent upon the mayor to make sure that all New Yorkers, and especially Jews now, given the massive surge of anti-Semitism, feel safe and secure. I hope he can get there. Unfortunately, I have not seen a lot of movement, a lot of concrete steps on his part to acknowledge that concern, and but I'm still hopeful.
All right. Doesn't sound like we're getting an endorsement in the last couple of weeks before Election Day, but you've made your views known. Thank you for joining us so much, Congressman Goldman.
Thank you for having me.